On today's show, we're going to talk about the biggest story of last week, OpenAI's new image generation tool that has sparked a Ghiblification of everything to websites, ads, and family photos. Let's talk about it, break it down what makes it different, and why this is important. I'm Daniel,
I'm Matheus.
and this is the Human AI Experience. We'll be right back. Okay, so let's start by breaking it down what happened last week, right? And if you're potentially living under a rock, maybe you haven't seen it or you haven't even experienced or you haven't even tried this. But I think this time this feels different because of the wide impact and the widespread that this new technology had, uh, even amongst people that I don't think usually uses AI for anything. That to me is quite impressive. So what happened? So OpenAI quietly rolled out a real-time image generation inside ChatGPT last week. So which is not DALI, because you could still use DALI under ChatGPT. It would just generate this really crappy, like DALI was uh, quite a revolution when it came out. It was one of the first image generation to be public, and it was in the beginning it was really crappy, but it was the first time AI or some of computers were actually trying to create images, right? But this is very different. First, because it uses a different type of technology, that it's not diffusion based. So diffusion based uh, basically is how Midjourney is powered. Like a lot of the image generation images are powered at the moment. So what does that mean? It basically creates images out of pixels. So it starts this noise, and then it starts taking shape, and then it comes from the pixel level to bringing more definition to the image. This technology that ChatGPT is using is a bit different. It starts from the sides or from the bottom, so it starts creating the image in a high definition from top to bottom. It's just a different approach. It's not using diffusion. It's some other technology which I can't recall the name at the moment, and it's a lot more realistic. And I'm still blown away. I've tested out a little bit, and it's just insane. It's really crazy. So I think this is already disrupting a lot image generation field.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's crazy because it, as I said, like it starts from the bottom from the top to the bottom, and it's really nice. It's nice to see the things going so fast and so like in high definition, so close to the picture itself. So it's a new experience. Definitely, is a new experience.
Yeah, and it is actually really good with text, for example. This has been a big problem for image generation. Uh, AI tools to generate text, usually they don't understand text, they don't read the text, so it just kind of becomes like these weird symbols. Midjourney got a lot better. There's a lot of them that got a lot of better in reproducing text, but not to this level. And I think it's because it's basically also using all the power of ChatGPT understanding of language to also improve the image recognition or try or the reasoning and the understanding of what you're actually asking. So I've seen a lot of people testing out with reproducing ads. So they would just take, like, say, an Apple classic old advertising. It would just take a modern product and then tell ChatGPT to blend these two things together, and he would do it really well, copying the same type of typography with the same style, same lighting. It's fantastic for product images. Is just, I think that's a game changer. I think that will speed up the creation of ads absurdly.
Yes, I saw a guy saying that in the last 48 hours, everything changed. He said like you didn't realize, but now the world is changing because in the last 48 hours they released ChatGPT released this new technology. And then he was showing exactly what you're saying, like some products. For example, if you have a chair and a table in a different photos, you just say like I combine these photos, and then you combine in a really well and nice photo, like this kind of stuff. And if it adds, for example, as you said, like a can and I don't know a person, so make it this person drink this can, and then it combines the image like so well that it looked like it was in a studio taking a professional photo. So it is a game changer. I think, of course, there's a lot of marketing on that, and this kind of a crazy influencers trying to sell stuff. It's always like that. Like they always sell the story that you are losing something, and you should
Yeah,
follow that.
the death of advertising, the death of
Yeah,
marketing. That's basically
this clickbait.
my LinkedIn. Yeah, my LinkedIn every day is just the death of something.
Yeah,
But honestly, it's just, yeah, it's just ridiculous. It's just,
yeah,
first, things don't die that quick. Second, you know there's some disruption, but you can also use it like
yeah,
to maximize or enhance your capabilities, right? So the way I'm seeing the discourse in regards to how can you use this for marketing instead of, it's not it's not going to happen that tomorrow all the marketing people will be off, will be out of jobs, and then some executives on a company will start doing their own ads. No, that's not going to happen like that. But people working in marketing can now test maybe 100, 200 different images that are very quickly put together to test different concepts, and then you know see which ads perform best. Instead of, the process of getting things out is much faster now.
yeah.
So that's how I see it, actually really empowering a lot of creatives, right?
And sometimes if you explain an idea and you don't show a photo or you don't show the concept behind it, people will not understand. For example, if it's something too crazy, people will just understand, like picturize it. I don't know if it's the right word, but to see that in their minds with their background, so they never see what you are doing. For example, you are an experienced marketing guy, so if you think something crazy, I know that knowing you for like 30 years, I know that it's gonna work. But someone that is doesn't know you, they might think like, no, I think this is too crazy. This is not something that I understand. So if you show a photo of this craziness idea that you're having, and you show this concept with a photo, then you can sell for this person that doesn't know you, what you're thinking. So this kind of stuff, this fast way of showing stuff, I think that's the revolution that we are talking about. Like this is the way that you can show and then demonstrate something that might be super crazy, but it's is soldable. I don't know how to say it. Is sellable. This, so so this is the step that I've seen that I think it might help artists and designers and marketing people to sell stuff.
Yeah, conceptualization basically, right,
Yeah, yeah,
of uh, ideas, right? I guess that's the thing. You still need to prompt it. You still need to have an idea of what you want to do, because it just executes, right? Let's say if you have a crazy idea of, I don't know, I want to put a clown uh, in a shark suit jumping from a helicopter on top of Dubai. I don't know. So you still need to have that crazy conceptualization of that crazy idea and then tell ChatGPT to execute.
yeah,
It's not going to come up with that crazy idea. Maybe you will, or maybe you will partially, and then you would build up on top of that. So I guess it's human creativity is more alive than ever. There's a lot of execution that it's going to get uh, the execution is going to be faster,
Yeah.
but you still need to create. You still need to have that to come up and challenge the status quo with a different idea, an innovative approach to things, right?
Yeah, one of the ideas, that's why I mentioned that it was, the Heinz ketchup. The guy just created an ad. Instead of putting the plastic bottle, they just put a lot of tomatoes, just showing that actually that the Heinz ketchup is made with tomatoes, so with real tomatoes, let's say. So it was a really nice idea, like a totally different concept that might not be possible to do it in a real world, only in this kind of images, like putting a lot of tomatoes piled up, to make the bottle. This kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's the power of surrealism in advertising, right? You can, even though that's not too surrealistic, it's just a different way of showing how natural the ketchup is,
Yeah,
which we both know it's not.
yeah, yeah,
It's full of chemicals and all this stuff. But anyway, for the sake of the marketing idea, yeah, exactly. So you can do a lot of experimentation with that now with AI in a blink of an eye, and that in a normal process, in a normal creative process before AI, that will just take days and maybe weeks for you to just conceptualize that. A lot of understanding of Photoshop, for example, or having some illustrators to actually sketching out, trying to materialize your vision as a creative director or a creative person, right? Now you can just ask AI to materialize that. But of course, you need to be really good at actually prompting or explaining what in words what your idea is. But if you can't do that, you have a magical tool in your hands, right?
yeah.
But just to go back a little bit to the whole image new image generation tool from OpenAI. So I think what makes this different, not just as a capability of creating ads or creating a lot of images in with a high fidelity in a really well executed and polished way, but what I see is different is the adoption. All of a sudden, my Instagram, my TikTok, my LinkedIn was completely surrounded by photos Ghiblified. What does that mean? So basically, one of the biggest use cases that we saw people using this new tool was to convert their family photos or their own photos into Ghibli versions of that. So anime, beautiful anime characters. They're basically popularized the studio's way, the studio style, and I've seen people that don't normally use AI wanting to use it to create these images. So it became a huge hype. People started generating memes from famous memes in that style as well. I've seen Lord of the Rings trailer. Somebody spent 9 hours taking the original Lord of the Rings trailer and making a Ghibli version. It went so crazy, so out of proportion that they kind of had to block it because, again, this is also a major copyright issue, right?
Yeah.
Because you're basically replicating an intellectual property from a creative studio, for example, and I think that's.
And especially Ghibli.
But at the same time,
Oh, sorry. You can go
yes,
for but especially
no, no,
this
go ahead.
studio specifically, they're kind of against AI. But I saw the video where they talk about that, like, and actually, I think they distorted it a little bit because it was in a specific tool that some guy was presenting, and then it was a bizarre thing. It wasn't something like real or something connected to the studio. I think the guy just, like, was just showing a tool like with a zombie like moving weirdly, And then the guy said, it's not human, So I don't think they're talking about a general tool, but that specific tool, that was showing up. So I think it was a bit distorted. So and now they are using the phrase of the guy like back in, I don't know, 10 years ago, and using it in a reality that it's totally different from today.
Yeah, typical internet distorting or stripping out the context and bringing miscontextualized quote, you know, surfacing that and then, giving it a different meaning. Even though I think, at least I'm a big fan of Studio Ghibli, right? And I think they have masterpieces. And I think their biggest asset or their what makes them different is that they actually hand animate everything, and that comes through the Japanese culture of being obsessed with details and the craft, right? It's all about the craft, spending that time. I've seen their latest film, The Boy in the Harem. There's a sequence that is, I think, maybe 10 seconds that took 1 year to hand animate
Yeah.
the characters. Like, and Miyazaki, which is the founder of the studio and then, the name behind most of these successful films, he was very adamant that needed to be animated by hand. And each character, it's a crossroad where there's a lot of different people going about their days, walking around. Maybe there's like maybe 50 different people. All of them have their personalities expressed by their body movements and the way they move. It's fantastic. It's a work of art. So I understand why he thinks that these machines cannot replicate
Yeah.
that, because the obsession of detail and the craft is their differentiator, right? And I admire that.
I admire
But at
that
the
too.
same time, you cannot ignore. At the same time, you cannot ignore that these technologies are coming, and they might be useful in different ways.
Yeah, yeah, I totally admire that too. But what I think is that Japanese, the Japanese culture is more conservative, so they are more into doing, as you said, like something more humanized, let's say. So I do understand that, and I admire a lot. I saw the this scene specifically was like crazy, and really nice. Because if you focus in each character, they're moving differently, doing things differently. So there's a lot of details on that, and I do understand the. Yeah, so actually this whole movement was, let's say, a critic, but at the same time was this controversial, and everything was kind of how can I say, like a lot of irony and a lot of this movement was an ironic movement, let's say, or sarcasm movement, because of this all this concept behind Ghibli. And of course AI is like
Yeah,
hitting
yeah.
back, like in a crazy way.
At the same time, I saw a Japanese studio with 6 people talking about how they use AI to speed up their processes. And then the owner of the studio was saying that if it wasn't for AI, they wouldn't be able to do the films and then create the animations that they do with 6 people. They would have to have a lot more people, and then they would have to have a lot more money.
Yeah,
So at the same time, there's another version of that, even in Japan, that are already adopting these tools and then already understanding where they can actually um, improve their workflows with it. So I thought it was really cool. They basically were illustrating, and then they would just convert the illustrations into, I think they would put it on Midjourney, and then you would just create that, and then they would just hand paint on top of it and then do some tweaks to the images. So it's basically a very interesting synergy between AI generated and human
Yeah.
intervention on top of it, and before and after the process. So I thought it was okay. That's a clever way to use it.
And it's another guy that he just like created the like he wanna use like a bird on his 3D, like, and then he just asked like ChatGPT to do the movements. So, for example, of the bird flying, so the bird was opening the wings and then closing it, and then he just took these movements, just this maybe 8 or 10, 10 different shots, like this scene movement, and then he combined it together, put it on the 3D, and then he got like some birds flying, in the so this was crazy. So you can actually create this movement without like the effort that there was that was done before, like moving a little bit and then a little bit. So this kind of stuff can definitely increase, the speed of doing an anime or doing any kind of animation. So I think it's an interesting way of doing the things, and as I said, like these these studios, they usually are really big. They have like, I don't know, 100 people to draw, and then they take maybe 2 3 years or maybe 10 years to do a movie, because of this slow process. So for me, it makes sense to speed up this process.
Yes, there's a few more things I would like to also cover it. One of them is, of course, the whole AI, the whole ethics about, you know, OpenAI allowing for replicating styles. I've seen people also generating, including me, because I was testing it out, Simpsons versions of images as well. You could basically do it. At least in the first 2 days, it was open for grabs. Everybody could just generate what everything, put a lot of copyrighted material there and duplicate. And but then they started limiting, of course, because there was a lot of backlash from the industry. And then we know OpenAI has a lot of lawsuits in the US also in regards to copyright infringement. So which hasn't been solved. So we haven't heard of how the courts or how legally this kind of copyright infringement will actually have an implication on these companies or potential other lawsuits. That's still to be seen, but it's happening. I don't know if Studio Ghibli published some sort of note in regards to that, but I guess they, at least OpenAI realized that this was getting out of control. They even tweeted that they released this powerful tool and people were using to make memes and so completely you know,
Yeah, but that's how internet
disrupted the
works.
way. Exactly, that's what people want, right?
Yeah,
They want to generate their family photos in cute ways.
and the funny fact is
And
that, no, sorry, you can go on, continue.
well, I think it was a clever strategy because that kind of like went mainstream, which means that it broadened the access to AI, and then I think they probably gained a lot of new subscribers because of that, and that's now rolling out for the free version as well. So if you have a free ChatGPT, you can actually do it in a much less uh, I think it takes 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes for you to generate every image because they're slowing down the process. Otherwise, it's just they already tweeted that it was burning their servers, like it was like heavily used for the entire week.
Yeah,
So
and another thing is that they are using a lot of water. So I saw like some. Of course, there's there's always these influencers trying to sell the chaos, So ChatGPT is gonna create like a unsustainable thing. Every image uses 2 liters of water and stuff like that. And then you're gonna go deep, and then you see that every image like uses 1.5 to 17 milliliters or something like that. Of course, it's not the amount of they're talking about, but it is something significant if you think about how many images they're using and how this all this process, and it's something that we need to think about it too. The use of energy, the use of water, the use of all these resources. So this is another thing that there was a polemic around this generated images.
Yeah, that's it's a problem. It's a problem like it is with blockchain, which nobody talks about that anymore. But that's still consuming a lot of
Yeah,
energy, and then still everywhere it's growing and expanding, and nobody talks about because AI is the thing that everybody talks about. It dominates the discourse. So, but it is definitely an environmental problem. It uses a lot of energy. These models needs to be more optimized to use less energy, less processing power. And I think the time will go. We're going towards that direction, but that takes time to develop hardware that is more efficient and so on. But we need to talk about these things because there is an impact, and we're already seeing the impact of climate change, right? And this is just accelerating it.
yeah, yeah. And these data centers, they use a lot of energy. They use a lot of water to cool down all the systems. So it is a big problem. But at the same time, of course, we need to discuss that. But I feel that they need to find ways of creating energy in a sustainable way. Like putting some photovoltaic panels, and I don't know, maybe huge wind farms. This kind of stuff. So I feel there are solutions, but of course they need to be done. They should be implemented.
Well, there's another thing as well in regards to that. They are now embedding metadata into every generated image that says that that image is been generated by AI. So all the images are coming with that metadata, so you know that this is not a real image, for example. So that's interesting. Is their attempt to try to, you know, label it as AI generated, which is a good step towards some sort of transparency and then not regulation, but at least giving it a more clarity. Even though there are ways of you know removing metadata
Yeah,
from images, and there's always ways to curb that, but at least the average person won't do that.
yeah. That's interesting. I feel that this is the way that we should do right now, like to have some watermark or this metadata, that's saying that, because if we don't do that, what can happen? Like you can generate like deep fakes will be easier to do it, and we gonna have this massive, of massive misinformation, a lot of deep fakes and a lot of fake news based on this kind of stuff. For example, Grok, when they launched Grok, there was a lot of memes like with Trump and Elon Musk. They were like kissing each other, they were walking and doing crazy stuff, and and it was really good. The images were good. They have quality enough to make you think. Of course, it was absurd things. That you can, when you see it, you see that it's not real. But at some point, if you do it a really good job, why not misinformate people? So that's a concern that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, it's important to flag these things, right? So at first glance, people, well, even though that's having that information and metadata is not easily visible, but depending on where you're posting, or that can be flagged then because it reads the metadata. But that also needs the platforms needs to adjust to that as well. And but I think, yeah, I think this was a huge leap comparing to what we have before, and I think this is first, it's going to democratize AI more and more because it lowered the bar even more for generating images. I would assume that in the next couple of weeks, all the image platforms or all the image generation AI tools will adjust their models to do the same or to learn from what OpenAI just did. And then we're going to see huge leaps of incremental changes in the next couple of weeks. I think Midjourney is also releasing something this week. So I'm curious
Oh,
to see if they're. But this was. It felt like it was a big a big evolution for ChatGPT, and basically, if you're using ChatGPT on a daily basis, you have access to this already. If you're paying for it, it's even faster. So no reason not to use it and play around with it. It's really great too. I've been using it quite frequently more now, and I even put it on hold my Midjourney subscription recently. So yeah.
oh, that's that's big news for me. I thought you were just paying like Midjourney because you were using super frequently, but it makes sense. Like to, and I was thinking because it's a new technology, isn't it? So it's not based on diffusion, as you said. So I don't know how prepared the other technologies or the other companies are ready to do this move. Because I believe it took like years or at least months, to develop this new tool. So how can they compete if they're using old technology, let's say? So
Well, they have to, right?
yeah,
Otherwise, that's the pace we're, or that's the reality now with AI. Uh, every week is a battle for beating the benchmarks of other your competitors. So it's been like that with Anthropic, with OpenAI, with Google. They all every week one of them beats the others, and then they keep just growing and evolving slowly.
yeah,
But that's the game. It's every week. It's just crazy. These things move so fast, and then they grow and then evolve so fast that it's just it's almost hard to keep up. But every week is a battle of who gets to beat the benchmark. And then I think at some point the differentiation won't. I don't. I think this is becoming a bit more commoditized. So I don't think the differentiation will come from that. Maybe it's going to be branding, who or privacy, or who deals better with your data, right? And then that might be a differentiator for a company to adopt, for example, which right now a lot of companies don't use OpenAI because they don't trust the company with their data. So yeah, so they use Copilot from Microsoft, that because Microsoft is a huge company and they can guarantee that your data will be secure, let's say, and it's not going to be used to train the AI. So
yeah,
that became like a competitive advantage to Microsoft, even though their product is not as good as the others. But so yeah, I think it's really transformative. There's a lot of impact that this could will have in a lot of different fields, right, in industries, and we just need to follow closely to see how people will start using this. We saw glimpses of what we can do across the internet in over a week, like people who experiment with taking photos of products and inserting into ads with models, and it looks really professional and really good.
yeah,
So my guess is this is just gonna grow up bigger every week from now on, and hopefully people will adopt it instead of rejecting it, right? Because there's no reason to reject this. You have to embrace it because this is here to stay.
yeah. And then just one last question, like, how do you think it's gonna affect like the design and then the creative world?
I think I touched upon that in the beginning of the conversation. I think it's gonna empower and speed up the creative process, and you will be able to test more ads and be more efficient because you will have the volume that it's needed to create something that resonates with an audience. So I think that's, if the creatives that are listening to this talk, if you know how to use these tools, you should start using it already, because you can gain a competitive edge towards other companies that are not using at the same speed to test ads and
And,
be more successful with your
and
brand.
one of the things that I have seen is that you can just put in some references and then said like, use these references and replicate in this new model. And it actually understands what you want. And then that's a way of speeding up the process. I think we mentioned that in the episode, but um, that was quite impressive. And I think we can test different stuff. For example, in architecture, probably you can use like a raw model and then put it there and then say like, okay, I want these textures, this kind of a facade, for example, these materials, this stuff, and then it might create something aligned with what you want. So you can speed up the creative process and the how to say, the number of tries and the number of models that you want to present for a client, for example. So I think that might be one way of using it. So yeah, I just want to mention that because I think that as we have this background in design, it's gonna be good if people that are listening to us, they can kind of relate and try this new tool.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay, I think we are way over our usual timestamp for episodes, so let's cut it. Let's cut it short. Well, let's just end now. And thanks for listening. Try out the ChatGPT new image generation. I think it's amazing. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It's free and helps us a lot. This way, it can help us also reach new listeners. Oh, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to stay up to date on our latest episodes. If you have any questions for us, reach out to us at hello@humanaixp.com or connect with us on Instagram. Thanks for listening. See you next week.